Democracy is on the ballot this November. That's becoming abundantly clear as Trump-backed election deniers continue to nab Republican nominations across the country. Just last month in Michigan, the state GOP endorsed a pair of big lie candidates for Secretary of State and Attorney General. 2 weeks ago in Ohio, Trump endorsed J.D. Vance, won the Republican nomination for Senate, among a field of other election-denying candidates. And then, of course, there is Pennsylvania, where this week State Senator Doug Mastriano won the Republican nomination for governor by a massive margin. Mastriano helped lead the charge to try to overturn the election results in Pennsylvania. He also spent thousands of dollars of his campaign funds to charter buses to take insurrectionists to D.C. on January 6th, where he appeared himself. The rise of these candidates and how the news covers them is uncharted and unknown territory. As The Atlantic's Molly Jong-Fast puts it, there's not a lot of precedent for how to operate a free press in a country sliding toward autocracy, and there's no manual for writing about the decline of democracy when one of the two main political parties no longer believes in it. How do reporters protect journalistic norms while trying to cover a moment in history that is anything but normal? Joining me now on set is Molly Jong-Fast. She's a contributing writer for The Atlantic. Molly, in your recent newsletter for The Atlantic, you argue that a mistake that media makes is framing the conversation around the issue of do voters care or will they care? What's the responsible way, then, to cover what is happening right now?
So the idea of will voters care is sort of to give yourself cover when you're saying something that's norm-breaking. For example, and this comes from when Trump had the Access Hollywood tapes. When the Access Hollywood tapes came out, most normal people thought the Republican Party would leave him because they were so shocking.
Run for the exits.
Right. But instead, they stayed with him. And that taught a lot of straight journalists this idea that voters are stuck to Trump and don't care what he does. And that is how we got this phrase, will voters care? So you'll see straight news, something that's shocking, like these Ginny Thomas allegations that just came out now, these emails where she had been trying to overturn the election. You'll see something shocking like that, and then you'll see this line, this throwaway line, will voters care? And I think it's a really dangerous precedent, because what it does is it implies apathy. And it implies apathy in a way that's so dangerous that it almost encourages apathy. And that's why I really think that it's time for straight journalists to stop using that throwaway line and to be sure, because the other thing is that the job of journalists is to make voters care.
Yeah, so to that point, American CPAC took its show on the road. I mentioned it when I was just interviewing Mark McKinnon. They went to Hungary, Viktor Orban, which is the authoritarian altar where you could worship if you're going to be that way. And this is what I wanted to read to you, because Orban said you have to have your own media. It's the only way to point out the insanity of the progressive left. And he, of course, praised Tucker Carlson, for example, saying Tucker show should be on 24/7. Does Orban actually have a point, though, about making voters care if you're the media by maybe inundating them or flooding them with the kind of messaging that we get from places like Fox News and Tucker Carlson?
I mean, it's dangerous. It's a dangerous slope, right? If you have, you want to tell the truth. I would say more than a left or right bias, what you want is a pro-democracy bias. So you want journalists who are straight journalists, and I'm not talking about in the opinion space because that's different, but straight journalists who are focused on the preservation of democracy, which means that when a candidate, like a lot of Republicans in these primaries have said they wouldn't do debates. That's a democratic norm that we've had for a long time. So you have to highlight when people are not going along with democratic norms on the left and the right. And if you have a pro-democracy bias, then you're focused on the preservation of democracy, which is what we all want.
But doesn't that presuppose, then, that everybody starts at the same playing field of what the definition of democracy is? Because I'm going to tell you that's clearly not the case.
Right. Well, that's certainly true. I mean, look, it's certainly true, but you want to inform as much as possible in a situation like this. And I think what I think is really important with this idea of will voters care is that you want people to see, really, your job is to show these voters what they need to care about. And that's what journalism is about.
But to that point, then, Should there be a clearer line of demarcation then between what we call straight news versus what we're calling the opinion space? Because I feel like that line has been beyond blurred. It's gone. It's been completely eradicated on some particular networks. And so should there be some type of hearkening back to a day when it was a very clear division between what's your, quote, straight news and what your opinion space is?
Well, I mean, in Fox News, you know, you have the evening opinion shows, and those shows are nothing but opinion. And in fact, in courts, they've claimed they're for entertainment.
But should they come with a label, though, Molly? Should
Yeah,
they say
they
this
should.
is opinion
of
only?
course, but they won't because it's Fox. I mean, that's the problem, is the conservative media is operating on a whole other plane. They're doing totally different stuff. So I would say ultimately you have a real problem there, because what the mainstream media is doing is trying to just tell you the story, and the conservative media is just trying to win.
Yeah. So there's something bizarre in this moment, right, about how openly these candidates are running on the big lie.
Yeah.
People know it's the big lie. For folks like Mastriano, though, it's the usual wink and nod kind of, you know, there's election integrity. He said that he wants to reset voter registration in his state. So let's listen right now. He's going to be on a radio show touting the power that he's going to have over elections in the state. Let's take a listen.
I get to appoint the Secretary of State, who's delegated from me the power to make the corrections to elections, the voting logs, and everything. I could decertify every machine in the state with a stroke of a pen via my Secretary of State.
How nuts is that? That he could just say it openly on a radio show. He's like, I could do whatever I wanted to. I mean, what happens now? Where's the obligation now on the media to be able to say, voters, you need to care about the fact that this man just got the nod in the nomination, and he maybe could flip the switch on your vote?
Well, the number one thing that straight journalists need to stop doing is false equivalencies. They need to just explain just how different these candidates are. And the Times had a piece today which compared Herschel Walker. Right, I don't know if you saw that, in Georgia. And I mean, Herschel Walker is an outlier candidate. He's a Trump candidate. He has numerous allegations of lots of malfeasance, financial, psychological abuse. And these are not the same. And when we do these false equivalencies in media, we really do betray our readers and lead them down a path that is not good.
Molly Jong-Fast from The Atlantic, your newsletter that just came out, amazing. Will voters care? Your answer is yes. And they should. I thank you for being here on set. It's always wonderful to have you here. Thank you.